The tapping grew louder, more insistent, like knuckles rapping against the glass. She mustered the courage to approach the window, her breath fogging up the pain as she peered out. Nothing. Just an empty street and the faint hum of the wind. She laughed nervously, trying to convince herself it was just her imagination, and returned to her bed. But the moment she sat down, her phone screen glitched, the display turning into a scrambled mess of static and distorted images. A low, guttural whisper filled the room, though she couldn't tell where it was coming from. "Claire," the voice hissed, dragging out her name in a way that made her stomach churn. Her pulse quickened as she backed against the wall, clutching her phone like a lifeline. "Who's there?" she demanded, her voice trembling. The whisper turned into a cruel laugh, echoing all around her. The temperature in the room plummeted, her breath now visible in the freezing air. Suddenly, the lights flickered and died, plunging her into darkness. The only light came from her malfunctioning phone, which now displayed a single chilling message: "Let me in." Claire dropped the phone with a gasp, the device clattering to the floor. She reached for the door, desperate to escape, but it slammed shut with a force that shook the walls. "You can't run from me!" the voice snarled, louder now, more menacing. A shadow began to form in the corner of the room, growing taller and darker with every passing second. It had no discernible features, just an overwhelming presence that filled the space with dread. Claire screamed, but her voice seemed to vanish into the void. The shadow moved closer, its inky form stretching across the floor like spilled oil. She tried to pray, recalling fragments of the bedtime prayers her grandmother had taught her, but the words stuck in her throat. The entity laughed again, mocking her attempts. "Prayers won't save you," it said. Suddenly, Claire's body seized up, her muscles locking in place as if invisible chains were holding her down. The shadow loomed over her, and she felt an unbearable pressure on her chest, like a weight pressing her into the mattress. Her vision blurred as the air was sucked out of her lungs. Just when she thought she would pass out, the pressure lifted, and she collapsed, gasping for breath. The shadow retreated slightly, but its presence remained. Claire's phone buzzed on the floor, its screen lighting up with another message. "I'm not done with you yet." She crawled to the phone, her trembling fingers barely able to grasp it. As soon as she touched the screen, a deafening scream filled the room, her own voice, distorted and amplified. The room began to spin, the walls twisting and warping as if the house itself was alive. Objects flew off the shelves, smashing against the walls, and the air grew thick with the stench of sulfur. In the chaos, Claire saw glimpses of something in the shadow, faces, dozens of them, screaming silently, their mouths stretched open in eternal torment. "Help me!" she cried, though she knew no one could hear her. Just as suddenly as it began, the chaos stopped. The room was eerily quiet, the only sound her ragged breathing. The shadow was gone, and the lights flickered back on. Claire sat there, trembling, her mind racing to comprehend what had just happened. She reached for her phone again, desperate to call her parents, but the screen was blank. Then, in the reflection of the black screen, she saw it. Behind her, the shadow had returned, its form more defined now. Eyes like burning coals stared back at her, and a jagged mouth twisted into a sinister grin. Claire turned slowly, tears streaming down her face. The shadow lunged at her, and everything went black. When her parents returned later that night, they found the house in disarray. Claire's room was untouched, except for one chilling detail. Her phone sat in the middle of the bed, its screen glowing with a single word: gone. They searched for her, calling the police, but Claire was never found.